Um, Today's salary negotiation workshop is really a sample size taste of what Women Employed workshops are usually like. Throughout this workshop, I'm going to be asking you questions, and I want you to write your answers in the chat. Unfortunately, because this is a short and sweet session, I won't have time to shout them out. I wish I could. But we still want you to engage. We still want you to put answers in the chat because there's a lot of power in seeing each other's answers. So definitely engage. Let's get started with our workshop goals. So our first goal is learning the race and gender wage gap, understanding the steps of negotiation. Our second step is understanding the steps of negotiation. And last but not least, accessing resources. So kind of as Kelly already has mentioned, on average, Latinas are paid just 57 cents for every $1 paid to a white man. When we look at the gap and what wages are lost by Latinx women, every month it's $2,245. Every year it's $29,098. And over a 40-year career is $1,163,920. And that is so much money lost. And we're really looking at not even filling that gap until the year 2206. That is almost 200 years later. I mean, and when we're really looking at this, a white man has already made all his money by December 31st, 2020. It then takes 10 extra months for us to get to closing the gap and making sure that women, or Latinx women, are getting paid the same as the white man. So that is why today's called Latinx Equal Pay Day. And we want to make sure that we say it's not a celebration. We're focusing on the state to center the experience of Latinx women and acknowledge that we are committed to closing the wage gap created by racism and sexism. So let's get started into the steps of negotiation. I first want to outline what they are, and we have a worksheet that we made for you. So my colleague, Mary Kay, is going to put that worksheet link into the chat. I want you to open it up and go along with us as we go through this. And I want us to first list the names of the 5 steps. The first one being understanding your value. Second, researching the possible. Third, preparing your strategy. Fourth, finding sisterhood. And last but not least, practice, practice, practice. So we're going to start with a reflection question. I want us to ask ourselves, what scares us about negotiations? Write it down on your worksheet. I hope you clicked the link that Mary Kay dropped in there. No need to share this in the chat. We know it could be personal, but whatever you wrote down, that is what we want to move you out of today. You know that fear is natural. We all have it. I have it. But natural does not mean that it needs to remain. In fact, before we even learn about the steps of negotiation, we have some pre-work to do. We need to take time to unlearn some of the filters that the systems of racism and sexism has put upon us. These systems tell us that if we have a stern or confident tone, there could be a consequence. These filters tell us that if we negotiate our salary, we could lose our jobs. It even tells us that we don't need that promotion because our place is at home with our kids, right? Unlearning is the process of coming to terms with who you are, what you want to do, and where you want to go. Believing that regardless of any outcome, our value will be stated and fought for. Unlearning is the pre-work to understanding our value, which takes us to our first step. Step 1, understanding your value. You probably have a voice in your head that whispers, are you sure you're as good as you think you are? Or maybe it says, why can't you be happy with what you've got? Don't you have enough already? Or perhaps even though you're very successful, you hear that voice warning you, watch out, don't get pushy. We want you to mute that voice. I know it may be hard, but we're gonna hit the mute button, put that voice aside. And I wanna say that you determine your worth, not your company, your friends, social media, or even your families. Like, let's talk about our families, y'all. There's a lot of pressure that comes from non-white families to be perfect, to take on multiple roles and never ask for help, never ask for more. It's that invisible labor that we do every single day. on top of our actual jobs. And that is what actually makes us valuable. Our worth is higher than anyone wants us to believe. So challenge yourself to think about what you bring to the table, write it down, and speak it into existence. Some of the reflection questions that we want you to go through, and once again, this is on the worksheet, hope you're opening it up, is what work products have you completed and how have they positively impacted your team? Do you have any awards, recognitions, certificates, or skills that are relevant to the position? And no, this is not just degrees. We want to come out of that. There are many ways that you are being acknowledged and that your talent is being seen. Even getting compliments from your supervisors or your colleagues. Write all of it down. None of it is too small. And then we want to move you all into writing a pitch. Your pitch should be 1 minute or less. Clearly state how you benefit the role or potential employer, and then end on a distinct ask. Yes, we're going to make an ask, and then we're going to stop. You know, sometimes we tend to get nervous and say things like, yeah, so I kind of wanted 40,000, but I know you may not have it. I know it might be hard for you all to find in the budget. No, we're going to ask the question, what we believe we're worth. I'm going to wait for them to respond. And, you know, right now I want to hold space for those of you who are feeling the weight of that step, understanding your value. Some of us could work on this one step for weeks, months, or even the next year, and that's okay. The goal is just to start. You owe yourself that. So let me go to the next step. It's researching the possible. I love this one because possible means that everything out there is within your reach. In your research, you're going to try to answer the question, what titles go with what salary amounts? What are people getting paid at most organizations for certain responsibilities? And that's called a salary search. We've included on your worksheet a list of different websites you can go to look up this information. There's so many different sites. We wanted just to kind of give you a place that we know works. So that list is in your worksheet. And I think something to really note here is that sometimes you think a job is 80,000, but it's really 40,000, or you think it's 20,000, but it's actually 60,000, right? So to get accurate information, we're really also wanting you all to do informational meetings with people in your aspired role. You know, some people take on added responsibilities that aren't apparent on websites, or they have a promised bonus or promotion. We want you to be able to ask these questions to kind of get to the root of where do I want to go and how do I get there, right? So we've included some of those questions on the worksheet as well. And I also want to state that if you live in the state of Illinois, our equal pay law was updated to confirm that it is 100% legal for you to share your salary and for you to ask your colleagues their salary information. I know that might seem nerve-wracking. We're taught not to think or talk about money, but we all need to be part of creating that culture of transparency. And then we have the questions of who has the information you need and how are decisions made. This is huge because sometimes your supervisor isn't the person with the final say, or there's certain steps you need to take to set yourself up for the ask. Maybe it should be at the end of the budget season, or maybe towards the end of the year, there's special bonuses or considerations they take in. It's important for you to know that information. So we also added some questions there for you to kind of go through and figure out what questions need to be answered in order for you to make the most strategic move for yourself. And that takes me to step number 3, preparing your strategy. And I always say preparing your strategy starts with preparing your mindset. What you can live with versus what you would love to get are two completely different things. I can manage with an extra $25 a week is a different mindset that I'm going to ask for twice that much because that's how much I am worth. Do you hear the difference in what that sounds like? I want us to read through some of these examples. And in the chat, especially on that side of what you would love to get, write down which one of these speaks to you. Or maybe you have your own phrase for yourself. Drop that in the chat. I think it's really important to watch our mindset when creating our strategies. You know, the truth is we tend to settle. I'm not sure if you all resonate with this, but for me, it's guilt. Am I being selfish? Am I overpricing myself and going to lose out on an opportunity? Could that money go to better things or people? It can be especially hard when you work for a mission-driven organization. But we have to think about ourselves and how we're also investing into our own lives. We need to aim high and negotiate hard, because the truth is that money is going to your white male counterpart anyway. And those men are aiming high and negotiating hard without remorse. So why shouldn't you? Step 4 is about finding sisterhood. I want to take a minute to pause, breathe in and breathe out. This is a lot. I know I'm also, it's short and sweet, so I'm going kind of fast, but all of it is in your worksheets. And I really want to talk about this because the 4th step is really about finding someone at work, at home, or even at your kid's school that will hold you accountable to going through with the negotiation and reminding yourself of your worth. Let me tell you a story. When I worked in a mission-driven place, I knew that I was struggling to pay for my rent, really couldn't, even make all my healthcare payments. I loved my job though. I thought this was like the dream job. I was in the community, serving people, helping write legislation, but really struggling financially. I could see the budget. I was actually in charge of the budget. And I knew what money was there, but it was hard for me to think that I was worth a raise. I went through all these steps that I've mentioned here, set up the meeting, but when the date neared for that meeting, I wanted to cancel it. It was one of my mentors that had to remind me of the value I had chosen for myself and the importance of making an ask for a raise. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And without her believing in me, I don't know that I actually would have went through with that negotiation, right? So the only requirement I have of this person that we're going to choose is that they believe in you. Ask yourself, what do they need to remind me of? What am I struggling with that I need them to really hold me accountable to going through this? And understand that you're not alone. Look at the worksheet again, and there's a space for you to jot down some names. And I understand that some of you may say, like, I don't have a person, and that might be the space that you're in. So we've also included resources that create circles for women, specifically Latinx women, to support each other in doing things just like this. It's really, really important that you have someone, because we're not in this alone. We're actually all in this together. And the last step is about practicing. So I said practice, 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 because I think a lot of times people add this as a step and no one does it. But we need to take this seriously. Practicing is a crucial step in your negotiation going well. It's a known fact that we as women fight like hell for other people. So we need to commit to fighting like hell for ourselves. And practicing is part of that fight for ourselves, right? Sitting in that discomfort and moving ourselves through it, right? We're gonna be going over in this part some negotiation sentence starters, taking your time, what it means to take a break during our salary negotiation. And a lot of this, we want you to practice with each other. If you come back for a longer workshop, we'll have breakout rooms where we'll really get into it, but I wanna just touch on some of these really important pieces. So the negotiation sentence starters, I find that a lot of people don't know how to start. It feels like an awkward conversation. You're kind of like feeling sweaty or uncomfortable about making them feel uncomfortable is what you're saying to yourself, right? And we tend to fumble with our words, but how we start is just really indicative of how the rest of the conversation goes, right? So we've provided some sentence starters for you all to practice ahead of time. Once again, it's in that worksheet that my colleague is putting down there into your chat. So we want you to go over some of these negotiation sentence starters. We also want you to take your time. People are gonna try to rush you. They don't wanna have this conversation. Like we said, it's something that isn't really done or we've been taught not to do, right? So take your time. We want you to feel comfortable. Break it up, ask some open-ended questions. And we've included that as well in your worksheet. And obviously you can come up with some other ones too that help you kind of take the conversation at your own pace. Last but not least, taking a break. Some of these conversations are overwhelming. They might, out of their own feelings or whatever, might say some not very nice things to you, or it might feel like rejection. And you are allowed to pause, reschedule the conversation, and come back to it at a time where you can collect yourself and really think about how they responded to you and how you want to move forward. So we've also included some ways to take that break. And the one thing I have to say is if you do take that break, we want to make sure that you've rescheduled another time for that conversation, closing the loop, right? And so those are the 5 steps of negotiation. I'm going to go over them one more time. Understanding your value, researching the possible, preparing your strategy, finding sisterhood, and practice, practice, practice. I want you to give yourself grace as you work through this process and get yourself an accountability partner. You know, it's your fight for a better salary, and whatever you need to do to make that happen, I want you to do it. As we close out today, I want to give you all information about the organization behind this workshop, Women Employed. Our bold and social goal is to close the wealth gap at the intersection of race and gender. Our mission is to improve the economic status of women and remove barriers to economic advancement. And these are 3 of the pillars in our strategic plan: to radically shift the distribution of resources by increasing the income of women, to forge pathways for women to reach economic security, leadership, and wealth, and to advance policies and practices that protect workers and equitably govern workplaces. One of those things being, no one could ask you for what your salary is anymore, what it was before. And we worked on that and we won that. And there's a ton of resources on how to go about that conversation. So we're going to drop the No Salary Toolkit in the chat as well as just, we want you to stay informed and get involved with us. So take out your phone. Here are our tags for Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. We have it all. And we also have these tags on your worksheet. Once again, open up that worksheet and follow us, get involved. This is a continuous conversation. There's so many other resources we have to support you in this really important journey. And I just want to say you can do this. And I want to end us on, before we go back to Kelly and our panel, some hot takes. So what are hot takes? The H stands for humble, the O starts for open, and the T stands for transparent. Humble, open, and transparent. Hot takes are a moment of growth, realization, tension. Just like a hot cup of coffee or tea, we sip on it. We don't usually wait until it's cold and we forget about it. We sip it while it's hot. And so I want us to do that today with what we learned and thought about in this session. Ask yourselves, what were my hot takes from this session on salary negotiation? Once again, it's a moment of growth, realization, tension. Share it in the chat. And I just really want us to sip on that hot feeling. And I hope, like your hot drink, it will empower you to make your ask and get the money that you are all worth. Thank you.